Hi everyone, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And I'm Dr. Hinson.
And we are here to talk about season 1 of The Crown.
That's right.
Summary.
For those of you that don't already know us, you might just be tuning in. We both have our PhDs in social science, and we love talking about 1, pop culture, and 2, gender and women and leadership and power and all of these kinds of big concepts, and using our academic brain to look at some of our favorite pop culture television shows. And we both lived in the United Kingdom for 5 years, so we both have quite an affinity for the royal family. So we're going to recap season 1. As you'll find on our YouTube playlist, we already have a recap and analysis for every single episode of this season. But if you're just starting on The Crown and maybe you only want a short recap, we've got your back. We're here.
Pretty much. So season 1, The Crown changed hands.
Yes.
Went from George the 5th?
6th?
9th? 15th? We don't know.
A George. Her father.
Went from a George to Elizabeth II.
Correct. He eventually dies in the show from a lung cancer, some form of cancer. He has an entire lung removed. So a lot of the early episodes of this season are dealing with her rather quick succession.
Yeah, and we should say that it was a lot quicker than anyone thought it was going to be.
She's like living in Malta with her husband, raising kids, everything's jolly.
Yep.
And then the king dies really, really quickly.
Really quickly. And it's like the second episode of the season.
Yeah.
So a lot of the season is dealt with how does she go from Elizabeth Windsor, which is her birth name, to Elizabeth Regina.
Which is the official title of the queen.
And as much as we are fascinated with that transition, the show...
Debatable whether Netflix is as fascinated.
The show seems to be much more fascinated with the dudes around her. So we spent a lot of time with Churchill.
A lot of time with Churchill. And like, fair play, John Lithgow was
well done.
Unbelievable.
Unreal. So good.
Earned that Emmy, 100%. But we kind of wanted a lot more.
I wanted a lot more of Lizzie.
A lot more of Lizzie. So we're dealing with Tory politics in the 1940s and 50s. We meet Winston Churchill. We meet Anthony Eden, who makes a mess of Egypt very quickly, and lots of internal machinations that frankly bored us. We have also Princess Margaret.
The show is also, of all the women in the show likes Princess Margaret the most.
Spends a lot of time on Princess Margaret.
I mean, she's fascinating and a bit of a walking train wreck in a lot of ways. So in terms of good television,
it was very entertaining.
I can understand why we want to focus on Margaret. But really the summary, if you're here, like we were, to learn about Elizabeth herself and how does she handle this transition and how does she deal with being a human and a queen, we would encourage you to adjust your expectations down because there are a couple episodes that deal with it, but not nearly as much as we would have liked. And really the summary is that it's hard.
Yes.
She has a husband who has no desire, so her marriage is an issue, and anyone who has been paying attention to like anything for the last 50 years knows that her marriage is an issue because Philip has a really hard time with traditional gender roles in marriage versus being the queen's consort.
And Elizabeth does as well. Like
Elizabeth really struggles.
She's very traditional in terms of understanding gender roles and the role of a husband and a wife as well. But she has to be a lot more pragmatic about it.
Real
and
quick.
Just say like, you know what? I know this isn't the way we wanted our relationship to work out, but guess what? I'm the queen and I don't have time for your nonsense.
Yeah. So in the first episode of the show, Philip and the king at the time, her dad, have a conversation about how Elizabeth is the job. Mm-hmm. And for most of season 1, that is what I spent yelling at Philip.
Yeah, he doesn't learn that lesson.
You made this choice, Petal.
For a while.
And arguably not during the length of this show. So this show is the first 5 years of her coronation, and we're about to jump in real time as we're filming this in 2018. The next season will be older. Season 3 will be older. So who knows if he will have, as they characterize him, settled into himself a little bit. But as of the end of season 1, we don't get a lot of sense of Philip and Elizabeth as parents. which is something that I was really interested in. How does she interact with Margaret and not Margaret? Charles and Anne. Thank you.
So many British names. So
they only have, just in case you were wondering, they're everybody at birth in Britain is given a list of 20 names.
That is it.
In Ireland, it's 5. So like at least, just kidding. But I somehow have managed to know like 14.9 million Johns.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I was very interested in how she navigates that. We don't really get that.
No.
We get a little bit of Charles and Philip, but not really. We don't get any of Anne and Elizabeth, and how do they deal with that? We get a lot of Elizabeth and her mother, who seemed like a charmer.
She certainly has expectations. She
has a lot of I would not want to be Elizabeth for love nor money.
No.
But every single episode of this show made me just want to like go and be like, hi.
Give her a hug.
Here's another corgi.
She doesn't have any real friends. She doesn't have anyone to share this burden with. Aside from her estranged uncle, David, who was the king, who was intended to be the king as the firstborn son, and abdicated. So we spend some time dealing with that in this season as well. But really, like, the only person that understands what it's like to be a monarch, to be the incarnation of God on earth, is her uncle. But because of the scandal around his relationship with Wallis Simpson and the way he treated their family and treats their family, she doesn't really have anyone. So it's a very lonely portrayal of Elizabeth, which I think is probably accurate, especially considering the early difficulties of her marriage with Philip.
Yeah. I think that one of the tensions that we see is people that want the power of the queen, like they want her to do things for them because she's the queen, without understanding what being the queen means. So I am not a queen, except in my heart.
Spoiler alert. Yes, you are.
But even I understand that power comes with responsibility. Like, I get that if somebody I know has a great deal of influence over something, there are boundaries to that influence. Mm-hmm. And what I can't quite get is how no one in her life understands that. Like, Margaret just wants her to do all this stuff without consulting the Privy Council. And I'm like, girl, you have been a princess your whole life. Like, how is this brand new information?
This isn't news to you. Yeah, Margaret is a whole mess that if you watch all of our season 1 recaps,
limited time for.
We whinge about her quite a lot because she only wants Elizabeth. She's jealous that Elizabeth is the queen.
But only in terms of the pomp and the privilege that comes with queen.
Yes.
She couldn't handle the responsibility. There's no way.
No, and she has no compassion for the level of responsibility or the limitations that are placed on the monarch whatsoever, because she just thinks that she should be able to fix whatever family problem she wants, including Margaret's relationship and potential marriage, and then failed relationship with group captain Peter Townsend, which takes up a lot of time in this season.
Way too much time. Overall, one of the main themes that I would say, and we've talked about this in the videos, is the different definitions of the word love. Mm-hmm. So Edward, the abdicated king, is who brings this in the most, because he talks about abdicating for love and it's true love, and I am not somebody who ascribes to that theory of love. I understand that he felt very strongly for Wallis, but he also had the love as service to his entire country and his family and all that other stuff. And the fact that he doesn't talk about it as a hard choice is really fascinating, where it's really clear to me that everything Elizabeth does is because she loves her family and loves her country.
And that everything is a hard choice.
Yeah. So she never talks about it as love. He talks about it as love, and every time he talks about it, I'm like, I don't think that's love. I think what you experienced was one of the types of love, but then you violated so many of the other kinds that it's really difficult for me. But I think, in Britain, stereotypically, service and kind of stiff upper lip and duty is a huge part of what it means to be British. Now, we're seeing a massive transition in that, not only during the show's time, but in 2018 and what that means. But I think there is a lot of citizenship as love in this show. And when you juxtapose that with a lot of the selfish actions of Margaret and Edward and things like that, it's really hard to have any sympathy for the royal family. Except for Elizabeth.
Aside from Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just want to, like, girl gets it.
Yeah. So the season wraps up with quite a scandal. The prince is on a Commonwealth tour. Yes,
Yep.
Australia. He's in Australia and visiting all these other Commonwealthy places. And we start to get the hints of a scandal that will lead us into season 2 relating to the prince's alleged behavior on this.
The show is very clear that they believe that Philip's actions are not alleged.
Yes.
So I'm comfortable in saying the character definitely did these things.
Yeah.
But alleged of if really His Royal Highness. Now, at this point, too, Philip is not His Royal Highness, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
No, he is the Duke of Edinburgh.
He's just the Duke of Edinburgh.
To remember, but if you watch the whole season, the whole first season, he is only ever referred to as the Duke of Edinburgh. So yes, he is just the Duke of Edinburgh at this stage.
Now, all of us are like, yeah.
But some tension in the royal marriage leading to this decision to send him on the Commonwealth tour. And some kerfuffles with
Lots of kerfuffles.
Eden in Egypt kind of wraps up the mess of Tory politics in the 1950s that lead us into season 2. So presumably season 2 will be more of the royal marriage. There was a lot of the royal marriage in season 1.
I don't think the royal parenting, though, which makes me sad.
The relationship between Philip and Elizabeth and whether they can come to some sort of understanding and he can calm the HE double hockey sticks down because he's a child. We don't know what's going to happen to Margaret. Season 2, presumably
History,
she'll be there.
Wikipedia tells us.
Like, we know.
That nothing good is going to happen with Margaret.
We know. We can find it out. You can ask Google what happens to Margaret. But season 2 will tell us, I'm sure, what trouble she gets up to. And, yeah, who knows what kind of politics. I don't know how far season 2 goes in terms of, like, timeline. So we've got a lot to look forward to. Hopefully a lot more time with Elizabeth. A lot more reflections on how...
I love her inner life a little bit more. Claire Foy is amazing at showing us on her face what is happening. I would like more things of Elizabeth telling me what she thinks than people telling me what Elizabeth thinks.
Yeah, and more on ideas of leadership, especially being a woman.
How is she handling this?
How is she handling this as a young woman? They dealt with that a little bit in the first season in terms of her finding her own feet and the push between being a young monarch and dealing with lots of older politicians and the kind of different transgenerational ideas about leadership and duty and citizenship and diversity and all of this that comes up, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
But we'd like some more.
I would like that to be the bulk of the show. My theory is that instead it's going to be Margaret.
It's going to be Margaret and Philip.
Yeah.
Always causing trouble.
So, for now, I'm Dr. Donnelly.
I'm Dr. Hinson.
We're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research, and we'll see you in season 2.
Bye.
Bye.